Okay, your HMO greetings. We're just waiting for a few people to log in. We changed the time. First we were going to come on at 11:15, but we had to switch it. But just want a few people to log in. If you have any issues with the sound or the images, just let me know in the chat room. I'm going to put a link in the chat room right now for the book itself. Okay. So that's the link for the book. And let's go ahead and get started. So again, Yedase, we thank everybody for tuning in. I'm Odwirafo Kwesi Radne Mbata Akan Odwirafo of Akwamu Maruka Tifimu, the Akwamu Nation in North America within Ojiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afurakaini people, African Black people in the Western Hemisphere. So this topic, we've been doing a series on identity and culture, true historical information, cosmological information as Afurakani, Afurakaini, meaning African people, Black people, culturally, spiritually, and so forth. We're going to go into one of our books. So I've published 31 books to date, and the 32nd book is actually an anthology. This book that we're going to focus on today is one of the 31 books I've published. I've included this book in the anthology. So this is my anthology, OG.Sim, True Historical Anthology. It is a 600-page book, 8.5 by 11 size, encyclopedia size. And you see the 12 books on the back. So it's 8.5 by 11 full color. When you look, actually, the book that we're going to focus on today is this one. So I'll just show you what it looks like in the actual text. So you can see this is the book we're going to focus on today. Let's see if you can see that. All right. But so I took 12 of the books I published that deal with true story, true historical information, cosmological information, things like that, and put them all in one volume for people to consume in an encyclopedia kind of volume and so forth. And we want to get into one of them, the one dealing with the prohibition, the divine prohibition against dissexuality or homosexuality in ancient Kamit and Kamit, Nubian Egypt, and in Afurakani, Afurakaini culture, African Black culture, wherever we exist in the world. It is the whites and their offspring who have been putting forth this false notion that homosexuality or dissexuality, we say dissexuality because dis means not. So when you have dissexual or dissexuality, that means sexuality is not occurring. Sexuality or sexual activity only properly occurs between a male and female in complementary balance. If you're not engaged in that, you're engaged in perversity and sexual deviance. It's out of harmony with divine order. It's actually an expression of mental illness, spiritual discordance. When it comes to our people, it is the whites and offspring, the spirits of disorder, who have promoted this perversity, and they've tried to normalize it, and then began to try to force it on our culture and start putting forward false ideas that, oh, we're in ancient Kemet, in ancient Egypt, you know, they were very open to homosexuality. And it wasn't until the Europeans came in, whether it was ancient Kamit and Kemet or different parts of Africa, they said it's only when the Europeans came in with the Puritanism of Christianity or Islam and so forth that they began to force the rigidness of anti-homosexual, you know, ideas. But prior to that, the African people were very open and fluid. That's a 100% lie. The whites and offspring have been trying to force dissexuality, homosexuality onto our people. It's part of their agenda. It's part of their deviant nature, but it's part of their agenda. We're not part of that agenda. We're not going to allow them to force that agenda on our people. So when they lie about ancient Kemet, and by extension, all of Afurakaid, we have the actual text to prove that they've been lying. So they tried to take a few texts out of literally millions of inscriptions that span thousands of years. And out of millions of inscriptions on papyri, tombs, temples, all over the country that span thousands of years, they took about 7 entries and tried to say these 7 represent an idea that our people embraced dissexuality, homosexuality, and therefore it was part of our ancient culture. We got these texts to prove, and I've been to Kamit a number of times and done the research and so forth, but we've taken these texts to prove through the texts that they pulled out that actually these texts go against dissexuality, homosexuality. So let's pull up the book. So I'm going to pull up, this is, again, the full book is part of this anthology. It's one of the 12 books. Just going to pull that up right now. Okay, so let me scroll that up for you. So we did the Origin of the Term God podcast, broadcast episode, live stream the other day. And we did the Afuraka Afrikaid, Origin of the Term Africa, showing our spirit genetic identity. And now we want to get to this text, and this is it. So we call it KOKOBO. KOKOBO in the Akan language means warning. So we're warning people that the whites and offspring have been lying about our culture and trying to push this dissexual, homosexual agenda on our culture, our ancestral religion. Of course, we're not going to allow that to happen. We're going to expose the truth of that. So, as we said, when they took like a few texts out of millions of texts spanning thousands of years, and they could only find a few, and they tried to pervert the meaning of these few texts, banking on the fact that our people don't study the language and culture and cosmology of ancient Kemet, so they would have to believe in what a white PhD would say. Well, we actually study the language and culture. We have a 2-part course on how you can learn to read and write the Medut Toro, the hieroglyphs of ancient Kemet, and we also compare them with contemporary Afurakani African languages. So you can see the same words in Akan, Yoruba, Igbo, and others that you find in ancient Kanini Kemet, proving the cultural continuity. So we've studied these texts and the languages, and we go forward with that. So I took 4 different articles, ones that they said prove that dissexuality, homosexuality was accepted, and we expose the truth. Now let's look at it. And I just want to briefly go through these. And of course, you can study the book in detail, but I just want to briefly go through them. So I took 4 of these articles and examined them, and then I put all 4 articles together in one text. So there are 4 different texts and representations of texts. We examined the text in 4 separate articles, and then I put them all together in one book, and this is what it is. So the first one, we want to tune into the first article in this book, The Divine Prohibition Against Dissexuality, Homosexuality, and Ancient Kemet. Now, when you look here, this is the portion of a text. And this, hold on a second. This particular papyri, and you find these in papyri all of ancient Kemet, when you see these deities seated in the middle, there's a particular point when a person transitions and they go before a group of divinities, a group of forces in nature, the 42 deities who are assessors of divine law and order, assessors of Ma'at. And you go before each one of these divinities and you show that you didn't violate the aspect of creation that they govern. So there are 42 deities in this papyrus, and then you have the head, which is Asar, so that's 43 together. And when you look at these 43 two divinities plus the head, which is 43, who govern all of creation. If you look in the physical body, because when you look in ancient Kemet, you're talking about the forces in nature and the gods and goddesses that regulate all of creation. That's a macrocosm. You look at your body, it's a microcosm of the universe. So you have the same thing. In your body, there's a set of 43 entities that regulate order in your entire body. Just like there are 43 deities who regulate order in creation. Who are the 43 entities that regulate order within your entire body? You have 43 pairs of nerves. And those 43 pairs of nerves, of course, the nervous system sends signals from the brain, the control center, to every part of the body to stimulate certain functions and secretions and contractions and expansions and so forth. But the 43 pairs of nerves regulate order within the entire body. Without those 43 pairs of nerves, the body would fall apart. In creation, there are 42 forces, male and female, expansive and contracted forces that regulate order in the divine body of creation. And they have their shrines within the 43 pairs of nerves within our physical body because we're a microcosm of the macrocosm. In the text of Kamit, you have to go before each one of these 43, it's 42 plus the sovereign, which makes 43. You have to go before each one of these 43 forces in creation to acknowledge that you didn't violate the aspect of creation that they govern. So you go before the first one, you invoke that divinity ritually, their spirit searches out your spirit to see that you're in alignment with that force in creation, that aspect of creation. Then you go to the next one. And then once you pass that test, you can be accepted into the community of the honorable ancestresses and ancestors. If not, you're not allowed to be in that community. That's just like if, think about a community or family, a big family, and they're having a big family reunion. Everybody's happy, everybody's good. And then one of the relatives who used to be a drug addict and rob and steal and break in people's houses and so forth, and they're still on that stuff, they stumble over to the house and try to get in. People are not going to allow them to get into the community of the harmonious group because of what they've done. They're shunned from that. They're on the outside. When you transition as a spirit and go to the ancestral realm, you can live amongst the pristine community of ancestresses and ancestors if you lived in harmony with divine order, just on a basic level. But if not, you're repelled and you're just an earthbound spirit, traumatized, hanging around the place that you died. Like if you died in a car crash, your spirit is still hanging around the corner where your car wrecked and so forth. Or if you jumped off of a bridge, your spirit is still hanging around the bridge and so forth, lashing out as people as they walk across the bridge and so forth. And you're still a suffering spirit going through trauma. But if you lived in harmony with order, and that's proven by going before these forces in nature, then you can be accepted. That's what this text is talking about. You also see the text of the weighing of the heart in ancient Kemet. And let me just show you an image of that real quick, so you can get a visual of what we're talking about. There's the weighing of the heart, famous scene in the papyri in Kamit, but it's referencing the same thing. This is in every papyri. When someone transitions, it's showing that the heart of the person is weighed against a feather. That's part of the process. If your heart is light, because you're not weighed down by anxiety and criminality and lust and self-destruction, you didn't engage in all that kind of discordant behavior in life. When you transition, your spiritual heart is placed on the quote-unquote scale to see if it's heavy. With that, if your heart can balance out a feather, and of course the feather is very light and it's balanced because you have a light heart because you lived in harmony with order, then you're allowed, after you go before that trial, like this person his heart is being weighed against the feather, he passes that test, then he's accepted with open arms in the ancestral community to live in peace for the next 100, 200 years before it's time for him to reincarnate back into his clan, his descendants on earth. But if he doesn't pass that test, then he's not allowed. Another test after this one, and part of that is going before these 42 forces in nature. Now, why is that important? Because amongst those 42, there's one in particular that we want to focus on that's directly dealing with the topic at hand. And that's number 11. So this is a text, and sometimes people will call them the 42 negative confessions and so forth, because there's a ritual invocation. You go before divinity, you invoke the deity, the spirit searches out your spirit body to see if you lived in harmony, and then you're allowed to go to the next one. Just like in traditional culture, if you know someone who practices ancestral religion, if you go into their home, we will have an ancestral shrine set up in the home, but we'll have the shrine of a divinity in certain places. So when you go in the home, you salute the shrine of the divinity that's right at the front door, and then you go into the next room and salute that divinity, and then you go sit down and communicate with the people. So we're used to doing that. Same thing here. You go before each divinity that governs every aspect of creation and so forth. Now, there's a ritual invocation, and we're going to talk about that for each one. So we say, in order to live in harmony and perpetuity after death in the ancestral realm, as well as during life in the physical realm, the Afurakani individual must ritually invoke the 42 Nsoru 2 goddesses, gods who are judges of Ma'an, Ma'at, divine law, in order to harmonize their energy with the energy of the divinities. They are the embodiments of divine order in creation. Their energy is invoked. Once the energy is invoked or called, that's the first thing. You invoke them through a ritual prayer. It can be internalized, infused, and replenished within the individual, like a drop of water fusing with a river, harmonizing with this greater forest body of water in nature. So does the Afurakani African individual fuse his energy with the energy of the spirit force in nature that he is ritually invoking. So let's look at what that looks like. This divinity right here is called Kererti. This is one of the deities, Kererti, one of the spirits that you invoke. Now, look at the ritual invocation. It says, Hail Kererti, coming forth from the land of the west. So that is the ritual invocation. When you go before the shrine of that deity, his name is Kererti, and in the language of Kamit, it's Ah Kererti Per Im Amintet. Ah means hail, Kererti, and as you look right here, and I'm highlighting that image, what you see is the Medut of the man with his hand saying, Ah, like saying, hey, Kererti. You're saying, ah, the term is ah. In English, people say, hey. In other, European languages, that's a hail. We're hailing, just like you hail a cab. You're saying, hey, come here. We're saying, ah. We're getting the tension of divinity Kererti. So, ah, Kererti. Hey, Kererti, divinity Kererti. Per Im Amintet, who comes forth from Amintet, the land of Amintet, the land of the west, the western realm, and so forth. So you invoke the divinity by chanting their name. When the name of the divinity is chanted, those sound vibrations provoke the energy of that spirit so they can respond to you. Just like a baby calling out, crying to the mother, those sound vibrations hit the eardrums of the mother, and they're like, oh, the mother's like, oh, the baby needs me. And this, from the baby's perspective, as a small entity, this large individual is coming to them to dispense that life-giving milk and so forth, those nutrients. So when they call out, sound vibrations invoke, then the great being comes and dispenses her life-giving energy and protection to the child. When we call out the divinity through prayer, the sound vibrations go to the spirit realm, provoke the energy of that spirit, and then they come to us and drop their or dispense their life-giving, divinely ordered energy into our spirit body and realign us with divine order. So the kereti per im amentet, that's a ritual invocation, and it provokes the energy of the spirit so they can respond to us. And they come in, and kereti comes and aligns the spirit with ours and searches out our spirit body to see if we were in harmony with his, the portion of creation he governs. So that's the invocation. Then it says, not have I penetrated or copulated nuck with a penetrator copulator nuck. Now look at the invocation. What you see in the text is an erect phallus. The term nuck means to copulate, specifically to penetrate. So they show an erect phallus right here. And then they show an erect phallus with seed coming out. They're very explicit about what they're actually talking about. They're saying Kererti, the divinity Kererti, who comes forth from the west, the land of the setting sun, the western land. It says, not have I copulated nuck with a copulator. They're very specific, as I have not copulated with a copulator. I have not engaged in same-sex activity. Because if I did that, I would be out of harmony with this divinity and out of harmony with creation itself, and that would disqualify me from being accepted into the pristine realm of the ancestresses and ancestors and the deities, because I was living in harmony, out of harmony with divine law. Out of all these 42 deities, some say, they invoke the deity and say, I have not stolen. Then another one says, I have not killed someone without just cause. I have not robbed an individual. I have not done this. I have not done that. There are a number of different things that we have to show we have not done because it's out of harmony with order. Number 11 happens to be the divinity Kereti, and is showing I have not copulated with the copulator. The whites and their offspring in recent times, before we were learning about the Madut and Toro, the hieroglyphs and everything, like 100 years ago, they were simply translated as it's written. But now that some of our people are aware that our people come from ancient Kamit and so forth, and that was an ancient Black civilization, our ancestral culture, they start shading the translation. They start saying, it says, I have not fornicated with a fornicator. The term nuck does not mean fornicate. It literally means to penetrate, meaning in English, copulation. And that's why they have the erect phallus and the erect phallus with the seed coming out. Let's look at the actual image. So you just saw this. We put it this way, but in the papyrus, it's vertical, but it's the same thing. This is the image of the papyrus. And then this is number 11, this one right here. This one right here. And so we pulled that one out just so you can see it. That's the man holding his hand up. Kererti, per amentet, who comes forth from the west. And then it says, not have I copulated. And this is the organ, male organ with the seed spilling out. Not have I nuck or copulated with the copulator. That's the male organ with the seed coming out again, and so forth. So that's the actual image of the text. So here you have, and this is every single person who transitioned. The reason why you have this text, the negative confessions or the 42 enunciations of Ma'at and so forth, every person who transitions has to go before these 42 forces in nature, invoke each one of them by name, have their spirit searched out, and declare and proclaim, I have not violated the aspect of creation, the divine order that you govern. So every single male and female in Kamit, when they transitioned, they had to prove, I have not engaged in dissexual behavior, homosexual behavior. That's showing that that was a criminal act, an act of spiritual discordance, just like stealing or murder or anything else. And that's just common knowledge. The only reason it becomes quote unquote controversial, because the whites and offspring tried to make it controversial because they want to try to force that agenda on our people, which is not going to happen. Now, when you look at the name of the divinity, Kererti, Amentet is the land of the west, the land of the setting sun, the gateway to the ancestral realm. The sun sets in the west, apparently, it like goes into a gateway or to a cavern, then goes into the underworld, and then rises once again in the east. That's the apparent look for us on earth and so forth. So the land of the west, Amentet, is descriptive of the gateway to the caverns, to the underworld. Now, we talk about the Duat is also the land of the dead and so forth. It means hollows and abysses. The goddess Amentet is the goddess of the western land where the Aten sets, and it enters the caverns. The Kerer is holes or caverns. Now, you look at the goddess Nut, she quote unquote swallows the sun at nighttime, but she gives birth to the sun in the morning. She's the sky, bent over the earth and so forth. So this is the sky. She's the spirit in the sky, bent over the earth. She gives birth to the sun in the morning, but then she swallows the sun in the nighttime and so forth. Hold on a second. When you look at the term Kereti, the god Kereti, Keret, a hole, a cavern, a grotto, a circle in the Duat, which is the ancestral realm, the gateway, cavern, hole, cave, den. So the deity Kererti, why is his name Kererti? Kererti is the deity that governs the Kerer, the gateway or the hole or the cavern that goes directly into the ancestral realm, to the realm. When you go into the spirit realm and you pass through the gate and so forth, the divinity that governs the gate or the Keret, the hole, the gateway is Kererti. He governs the sacred holes or gateways into the ancestral realm, but also the sacred holes or gateways in the body. What's another sacred hole or gateway in the body? The nostrils. You breathe in air, life-giving air and so forth. That's a goal, that's a keret, that's a hole, that's a gateway. It has to be protected. You can't pour water up your nose because you'll drown. Same thing with the keret, the hole of the mouth. That's a gateway. You take in food, you take in air and so forth. Can't take in the wrong thing because you'll be poisoned. You can die and so forth. Another hole is keret, the eardrums. You receive information, you have the balancing, inner ear, vestibular system and so forth. The wrong thing can't go in the ears because you're gonna suffer. The same thing with your sexual organs, the male organ, the female organ. You can't put the wrong thing in the hole. They have a specific role. The male, of course, for urination and releasing, water from cleansing the body through the renal system and so forth, the kidneys, the ureters and bladder, is purification, releasing waste, but also, of course, through ritual sexual activity, procreative activity, seminal fluid used to bring a child into the world and so forth. That is the keret, or the hole that is into the urethra that leads to the prostate gland, where the seminal fluid is. You can't put the wrong thing in the hole. The anus is another hole where the end of the excretory system and so forth, where you release waste and so forth. You don't put anything into the hole because that's a violation and so forth. So any violation of any keret, any gateway, quote unquote, hole or cavern or gate, the nostrils, the mouth, the ears, the urethra, for women, the vagina and so forth, the anus and so forth, the divinity Kerer governs the gateway, the hole, the opening. Only live in harmony with divine order. If someone said, it's okay to shove different things up your nose instead of just air, you would say they're insane. If someone said, you can just shove anything in your ears, it doesn't matter, you would say they're insane. You put anything in your mouth, it doesn't matter. It could be motor oil, it could be tissue paper, it doesn't matter. It's just a hole. You would say that's insane. But when it comes to the anal cavity and, different parts of the body, then they try to say, oh, well, that's normal. That's insane. And it's out of harmony with divine order. And every single male and female in ancient Kemet had to prove, not just say it, but they had to prove to the deity, Kererti, who governs the holes, governs the caverns, governs the gateways, that they never allowed any foreign object or any violation of the sacred gateway. Every one of these gates, your nostrils, that's sacred. Your mouth, that's sacred. The ears, sacred. The reproductive organs, sacred. Every part of your body that's a gateway, that's sacred because it goes into the internal organs that keeps your body alive, keeps your body healthy and so forth. So this is common knowledge, everyday common knowledge that even for a child in ancient Kemet, that was common knowledge. The fact that the whites and their offspring try to create an argument around it is part of their mental illness in and of itself. Okay. So we go into detail about that in the book. We just wanted to show, the cosmological foundation for the divine prohibition ban against dissexuality, homosexuality. And one thing that's also important, and this is the goddess Amentet. She's the goddess who governs the western lands and the land of the setting sun. And when the sun goes into the gateway and so forth, she's the female spirit that's there that governs. And she's also receives the spirits of the deceased. When you first transition, your spirit leaves the body and so forth. One of the first female spirits you come in contact with is Amentet. So now there's also one other thing. When we talk about someone transitioning in their spirit, maybe they were troubled and they jumped off of a bridge because they wanted to commit suicide because they were so troubled in their life. And that's what happened. And now their spirit is, they're a troubled spirit. So now their spirit is hanging around the place where they transition. Their spirit is hanging by the bridge. And every time someone walks across the bridge, if they're walking across that bridge to get to another building that has a bunch of restaurants in it and they're on lunch, they're working downtown and they cross this short little bridge to get to the building that has a food court with all the different restaurants, and they go across that bridge every day for lunch and they come back across the bridge and so forth. But they start noticing that every time they get close to the bridge, they start feeling this overwhelming sense of melancholy and depression, and they feel like they want to jump and they feel real tense. And as soon as they get close to the water, they feel like they want to throw themselves into the water. Now, if they're not involved in ancestral religion, they will assume that they're having some kind of breakdown, and they go to a therapist and they start asking them, are you really happy in your marriage? Are you really happy with your job? Are you really happy with your family life? And they're trying to probe their childhood to see what's causing them to have suicidal thoughts. If someone practices ancestral religion, they know what's going on. Any foreign thought like that, they don't say, why am I thinking this? That's what someone raised in this culture would say. Why am I thinking this? Why am I feeling this? In our culture, we say, what or who is making me think this? So they know it must be some other spirit around. And then when they do the divination or have someone who is clairvoyant, they can see that spirit sitting right there and they can hear them. Every time someone walks by the bridge, they project and yell at them, just like a homeless person who yells at people every time they walk by their space. But that spirit is still sitting there, and they yell or project every time someone walks by them. But since they're a discarnate spirit, you just feel the negative energy. And now you feel what they're feeling, like you want to jump. When you do the real investigation spiritually, if they went to a priest or priestess who was traditional, they'll say, oh, that's not you. There's a spirit on that bridge. He jumped and killed himself 5 years ago. He's still hanging around the bridge. And every time you get close, he's saying, hey, jump, jump, jump. If he was sitting there physically yelling that to you audibly, you would say, every time I get close to this bridge, there's a homeless person yelling at me saying, hey, you need to jump and jump in the water. But since he's not visible and you feel that energy, you assume that it must be coming from you. So we know the differences, and that's why we engage in meditation and purify ourselves on a regular basis, just like you work out every day, strengthen yourself, and you eat food and take vitamins and so forth. You also engage in ritual meditation for a few minutes a day just to purify your spirit body so you can move in the world and repel these kinds of messages. But if you have an idea, it doesn't always come from you. And if it's a foreign, insane, perverse idea, you know it's coming from an outside agency. So that's very important, because these ritual invocations account for that. If the desire within you rises to steal or murder all of a sudden, you could say, okay, that's not coming from me. I'm not trying to murder some innocent individual. Where is that coming from? I'm not trying to steal something. I don't steal. So where is that coming from? Then you find out it's coming from somewhere else. These 42 assessors of Ma'at, they're also saying not only that you have not done these things and you have not violated their place in creation, but they also share something else, which is very important. If you're going through life, so it's not just after death, if you're going through life, throughout everyday life, and all of a sudden this unusual urge appears that makes you want to engage in some criminality, then you can recognize, oh, the 42 assessors of Ma'at, these 42 divinities, they don't play that, they don't govern that. So if that arises within me, it must be coming from an outside source. So you need to see what source that's coming from and neutralize that, because you know it's out of harmony with order and somebody's trying to get you to do something. So this idea that, so that's whether it's murder, whether it's, theft, any kind of manipulation, whatever it is, they're against that. So some people would try to say, well, if they had to have a prohibition against that, then that must mean that they were doing it so much that they had to come up with a law to stop doing it. In the Western perverted mindset, that sounds logical, but it's actually idiotic. When the whites and offspring invaded northern Kamit 5,000 years ago and they were defeated, some of them remained in northern Kamit. And later in the book, we talk about the ones who invaded and they remained in the north. And then they continued to try to invade Kamit and they kept getting beat down for thousands of years. There were a couple of times that they took over for like 150 years, but then they were repelled once again. There were intermediate periods in Kamit when they took over, but most of the time they were repelled. But some of them were dwelling in Kamit and they died. Some of them were living as mercenaries. Some of them were trying to come into the culture and act like they were coming in peacefully as diplomats from other nations and trying to live amongst the population, mainly in the north and so forth. There was a foreign colony that they were called Avarice in the north, where the foreigners were living. The whites and their offspring were living after they had first tried to invade, but then later tried to come and act like they were just visiting and trying to be diplomatic and so forth. Those individuals, when they transitioned, their spirits were hovering around. So if we came in contact with one of them and all of a sudden you're having this urge to engage in dissexual activity, that's not coming from you. That's coming from the discarnate spirits of one of our enemies whose spirit is in the country because they live there, they transition, their spirit is still hanging around, and you come in contact with one of them. So, and whether they try to encourage you to do that or any other criminal activity, what the 42 assessors of Ma'at are saying is that anytime you have any urge to engage in any kind of criminal activity, whether it's murder, which is an unjust killing, because there's justified killing your enemy, defending yourself, but then there's unjust killing. But any kind of criminal activity that you have all of a sudden this desire to engage in, you look to see where it's coming from as opposed to assuming it's coming from you. So these 42 assessors are saying, if it's coming, if it rises up within you, it must mean that some other spiritual agency is afoot and you need to neutralize that. So that's where the law came from. All right. And then I want to touch on one more within the book. And of course, you can read the entire book so you can get the full breakdown of that. We just wanted to touch on that. Another one is Ni Ankh Khnum and Khnum Hetep. They try to say, and you will see this online, that they'll say Ni Ankh Khnum and Khnum Hetep is the first gay couple in the history of the world, and they show them embraced here. Pure stupidity, 100% fraud. This is the criminality of the whites and their offspring. Neank Kunim and Kunim Hetep were identical twins, and they had wives and children. And when you look at the term for twins, you'll see why they have them this way. And you see when twin brothers hug in a picture like this and you take a picture, this is what's happening. So look at the term for twins in ancient Kamit. In this dictionary, they say heter, but it's really spelled HTR. It's hata, hatar. And we know it's vocalized as hatar because in the Akan language, the term for twins is ata, ata. So, hold on 1 second. Okay, so what does hatar mean? It means to join together, to yoke, to unite, to be friends or allies, but it also means twins. And when you look at the Medut, what does it show? It shows the two individuals holding hands, because in birth, the twins are together and they're bound together when they're in the womb. They're bound together in the womb, and they're bound together throughout life, and their spirits are together. When their spirits enter into the womb, they're in the same cell and they're closely tied like this for 9 months, and then they come out of the womb. Now, but they don't just show two people that look identical, same size, same height, same build. They show them two, but they show them grasping, holding on to each other just like they did in the womb. So hatar means to unite, to yoke, to join together, but that's also the word for twins, those who are joined together. When you see Neank, Kunum, and Kunum Hetep as identical twins, not fraternal twins, but identical twins, they are hatar, hatar, yoked, united, joined together. That's how they're showing that they're twins and not just, hey, this is just a friend of so-and-so. Look at their names. And this is the other piece. Neank, Kunum or Kunem, and Kunum or Kunem Hetep. This is where the whites and offspring won't tell you the truth because they're lying about the culture. Why are they called Neank Kunum and Kunum Hetep? This is the deity Kunum or Kunem. He's called the divine fashioner. He fuses together the body and the soul and fuses them together on the divine potter's wheel and so forth. So his name, Kunem, literally means to unite with, to join together, to conjoin. He is the force in nature that conjoins. He facilitates, he's the force, by the way, who facilitates the fusion, the energetic force that facilitates the fusion of the sperm and ovum when they unite. Kunum on one side and the female divinity Neat, the goddess Neat on the other side as husband and wife. They're the wife, they facilitate the fusion of the sperm and ovum. The energetic force in the sperm and the energetic force in the ovum. On Kunum's side, it's the spiritual force that animates the sperm, Kunum or Kunim, the spiritual force that animates the ovum, Neat. They come together and fuse together the sperm and ovum, and he fuses them together. And then, of course, once they're fused together, then Neat takes over the goddess and then starts the cell division that unfolds the child. So there's a fusion, and then there's an unfolding cell division. But he facilitates the conjoining. It's the male who facilitates the conjoining because the male's seed leaves the body of the male and the union takes place inside the body of the female. So he's the conjoiner. They're named after, as twins, he's the patron deity of twins because he's the one who conjoins or unites together. Hatar, twins, means to join or unite or to yoke together. This is Kunum on the divine potter's wheel. This is what happened with you before you were born into the world. He took your soul and your body and conjoined them together. And just like he conjoined them together, He also conjoined, the sperm and ovum together along with the goddess Neith and so forth. But he's the patron deity of twins. They are named after Kunim, Ni-Ankh Khnum or Khnum Hetep, because they're the patron. He's the patron deity of twins, and they're named after the god who's the patron deity of twins, the one who unites together. This is another image of Khnum Hetep and Ni-Ankh Khnum and so forth, with their children. And as we say, by the way, all of the Egyptologists know that they don't represent a homosexual couple, but they lie because they know the public is ignorant and they think the public will go along with that. So when you understand the cosmology, even with Ni-Ankh Khnum, Ankh, life, Ankh means life and so forth, and Ni-Ankh means bringing life and so forth. Hetep means coming to an end, coming to peace, coming to balance, bringing something to an end and so forth, equilibration. So the bringing of life, that's expansion, and then bringing to an end or peace or balance, equilibration, that's contraction. So you bring the life and then you stabilize it. Ni-Ankh Khnum was the firstborn, so he came out first. Ni-Ankh Khnum bringing life, Ni-Ankh. And then Khnum Hetep is the one who came after. He was born second. His name reflects his place in the birthing cycle. So one came into being, the expansive one who brought it into being, Ni-Ankh bringing life and so forth. And Khnum Hetep is the one who came after and came at the end and balanced. Just like the sun setting in the west, that's the end, and it sets on the western mountain range and it becomes equilibrated and balanced there. That's the Hetep piece. So they're showing their birth order. Ni-Ankh Khnum, firstborn, Khnum Hetep, secondborn, named after the deity of twins, the deity whose name literally means to join or yoke together. And this is why they are yoked together. That's the cosmology. And there's a sacred cosmology with the deity that governs twins all across the continent of Afro-Africa, whether it's the deity that governs twins, the male deity that governs twins amongst the Ewe people in Vodun is called Ho-Ho. The Orisha, the deity that governs twins in Yoruba, is called Ibeji in the Yoruba tradition. In Akan, the male divinity that governs twins is called Abam. And so we have that cosmology throughout our cultures. So we know that because we practice the culture, and anybody who practices ancestral religion, whether you practice hoodoo in North America, the Akan tradition on the continent, which is the hoodoo tradition in North America, or the Yoruba tradition, Igbo, Basa, Fula, Fang, and so forth. We know about the deity, patron deity of twins. We know about the twin energy, the complementary balance that they bring into the world and so forth, the balancing energy they bring and so forth. We have that understanding. So the whites and their offspring would try to take this one image, that's an image of two people hugging, and trying to say, well, actually they're kissing, which they're not, they're hugging. And then one brother has his arm around the other one, and you see that kind of imagery in Kamit. And if you take your own pictures, if you had twin brothers and they took a pose like that, and they took that one picture and tried to promote this idea, PhDs, the whites and their offspring all over the world, trying to promote this as the first homosexual couple because they're promoting that idiocy, that sexual deviance. So, okay, so that's the first two articles in the book. We're going to do a part 2 so we can govern the other two, get through with the other two. Hold on a second. But any questions you can ask in the chat room, any questions about any of that information? Hold on a second. And I'm going to put a couple of things in the chat room right now. Okay. Okay, so when you look, and we put this link in the chat room, but just so you can see it. Okay. So once again, this is the book that's from is my book, OG.Sim, True Historical Anthology, 600-page book, 8.5 by 11 full color. And the 12 books that I included in this anthology, that I wrote all 12 of them, is the KOKOBO book is one of them. So if you want to, you can order this book. We have for our subscribers and followers. Since you're one of the followers, subscribers, you have an automatic 30% discount for the book. So when you go to the Nhoma page, which is the Nhoma page on the website, we have this discount. Let me show this. Okay. So that's the book. And then you click on it. When you click on the button here, the book is on Amazon, but Amazon charges, they take 60% from booksellers. That's why when you see book owners have their books on Amazon, but they charge it's cheaper on their website because Amazon takes 60%. That's just what they do. But you can put it on Amazon because more people can see it, but they do take 60%. So we can offer it cheaper when you get it directly from us. When you click on the button here and you go to the Square site, and let me show you that page. This is not showing up right now. You can check it when you check out, you can opt to pay in 4 payments. So you can pay $13 to order the book today, and then the other $13 payments will come over time. But to order it today, you can do it for 13 payments, and this is how you do that. So you click on the button, you'll see that's the page. It's $44 plus $8 shipping, which is $52. But when you go to checkout, you can get the book, and you'll see here. Let me make sure you can see. Yeah. You scroll down. There's the Afterpay 4 interest-free installments of $13, and that way, we try to make our book affordable. You can just pay $13 to order the book, and then over time with Afterpay, you'll pay $13 for the next couple of months until you pay it off. So we do that because we want to make the book affordable so you can access that. But that book dealing with the divine prohibition against dissexuality, homosexuality, that is one of the books in the 13 or 12 book anthology. You can access that now. Hold on. Okay. So before we log out, any questions on any of that information that we went over? And we also have our upcoming group healing ritual this Sunday. Let me show you that information right quick. Okay. So we've been doing the Oja, which is fire, and Sio, which is water, and Flama, which is air, Asase, which is earth. We've been doing a group healing meditation. So we'll do a presentation, and then we'll have a group healing ritual, a form of Susu, which is the ancient term, term for meditation. Online, we've been doing them for the past few Sundays. We did the fire element first, then we did the water element, then we went to the air element. And as you can see here, first we did the Oja Day, which is the fire element, Nsu Day, water element. We did Mframa Day, the earth element, last Sunday. And this Sunday is the final segment, is the Asase Day, the earth element. So we're going to talk about the Earth Mother divinities, Asase Afua, the fertile Earth Mother, Asase Ya, the barren Earth Mother. That's what their names are in Akan. They're called Asase Nebetepet and Asase Nebetpet in ancient Kemet. They're called Onile and Yewa in the Yoruba tradition, with these twin Earth Mother divinities, twins once again, how they govern our physical body, our health, our stability, and so forth. And when you engage in Susu meditation, you can realign yourself, discipline yourself, balance your physical body out, and so forth. Deal with your immunity to strengthen that, a number of different things spiritually and physiologically. So we're going to talk about these, the Earth Mother divinities in the beginning portion, deal with their cosmology and how they're related to us specifically. And then we're going to engage in the ritual Susu meditation. So when you click on I'll put this link in the chat room as well. And you can register now. As with all of our events, so that link is in the chat room. As with all of our events, they are open to Afurakani people, African Black people exclusively. So we're doing ritual. We're not inviting any non-Black individuals into that sacred space as usual. So when you go to the page and you click on the Asase Asase element, you'll see the information there. This is where you register and so forth. And then we'll send you a link to one of our free book downloads. There's a certain section in one of the other books that we're going to focus on with regard to the Earth Mother divinities. So you'll see that. Also on this same page, we just put this up the other day. We've curated 42 courses, 42 online courses over the past number of years. Since we've been publishing our books, I published my first book 28 years ago, and now I have 31 books. This anthology is actually number 32. But in that time frame, we've also curated 42 online courses. And one of them is a 2-part series, Medut and Torah, we talked about earlier, divine inscription, how to read and write the language and script of ancient Kemet, how to read and write the hieroglyphs, the Medut and Torah, the divine words. So we did this course a while back, so now it's archived, so you can do a self-study piece. At first, it was a 6-week course online, and we were going live every day for 6 weeks, but all those sessions are archived. So when you order the archived course, you get those 6 weeks worth of those videos. Most of them were like 2.5 hours. And then you also get the link to the book, Let the Ancestors Speak, a guide to the grammar of the language of Kemet. So this is introductory and intermediate level learning the grammar and structure and the language of the Medut and Torah, the hieroglyphs of ancient Kemet and so forth. So it's a very, good book. And we go through that book in detail. And we also make comparisons with contemporary Afurakani languages and culture and religious expression to show that the same deities and the same words we were using in ancient Kemet are the same deities and words we're using in the Akan language in Ghana, the Yoruba language in Nigeria, the Hudu tradition in North America, which is the Akan tradition. There's a cultural continuity. So you can learn to read and write the language of ancient Kemet. Part 1 and part 2, each one is a 6-week course. We just put this back up. So this course, and one of the reasons we did this is because this book is written by a well-regarded scholar. He's an elder, transitioned, honored ancestor now, Ankh Mira, a very, very good book. And we wanted to present the learning of the reading and writing of our language from an Afurakani scholar, but also people are charging hundreds of dollars for you to take a course on how to read and write the language. And they're only giving you basic things, and they're not showing you the Afurakani root, African root of the language and how it still exists all across the continent today. We give you that detailed information, how to read and write the language and so forth, plus the cultural continuity piece and cosmology, knowledge of the deities. But our course is $15. So other courses are hundreds, it's $15. We're not going to be overcharging people to get the knowledge that's part of our ancestral heritage. And plus you get the ebook download of this text. So that is on the PayHip site. So you look on our PayHip page, you'll see a number of our different books, our documentary films, some of the courses are there and so forth, the group healing ritual, all of that is on the PayHip site. So you can see that. You can see that right now. Go to the page right now. So any questions on anything before we log off? Okay. So once again, Yedase, we thank everybody for tuning in. And Yebesha Bio, we will meet again. That's it. Yachirmo, that means greetings. I just wanted to give a quick update. You'll get the details in the clip that follows. I just wanted to show everyone. So my soft cover book, Odwirafo True Historical Anthology, is now available. It's live on Amazon, but we also have a 30% discount when you order directly through our website. As we said before, in some of the postings and information we sent out, you know, Amazon takes 60% off the top for booksellers on their distribution site and so forth. So we can offer it at a 30% discount, you know, on our website. So you'll get the information in the clip that follows, but 8.5 by 11 size, 600 pages, full color, and we go into detail about various aspects of Afurakani, African ancestral religion, culture, nation building, true historical information, spirituality, cosmology, and every facet of Afurakani, African Black identity, and so forth. So check out the clip that follows. We look forward to connecting with you, and Yedase, we thank you for your support. Odwirafo True Historical Anthology. This is a collection of 12 books in one volume written by Odwirafo Kwesi Radnehmpata Akan. This 600-page anthology is comprised of 12 books within the 31-book corpus published by Odwirafo, which focus on true story, cosmology, ritual, identity, and nation-building restoration for Afurakani, people, African Black people, wherever we exist in the world. Included within this anthology is the origin of the fictional characters Jesus, Allah, Yahweh, Buddha, and more. The etymology of the term God in the language of ancient Kamit, quote-unquote, Egypt. Origin of the term Afuraka, Africa in Kamit. Etymology and cosmology of religion and spirit in Kamit. Ankh and Kara, the origin of the terms yoga and chakra in Kamit. Afurakani, African Black origin of civilization. Divine order in Afurakani, African cosmology. Ritual in Afurakani, African ancestral religion. Nature of the soul as divine consciousness in Akan cosmology. More means dead. Male-female complementary balance in ancestral religion. Ancestresses, ancestors, goddesses, gods, biology, geology. Racial exclusivity in ancestral religion. Spirigenetic inheritance. Divine prohibition against dissexuality, homosexuality in Kamit. Black nation building, restoration, rooted in ancestral religion, and more. This anthology was curated to function as a volume that will positively transform the mind of any Afurakani, African Black individual, youth, or adult who receives it. We examine every facet of Afurakaitnit African identity, empowering readers to transform their minds and thus transform their condition wherever they exist in the world. Special 30% discount for our subscribers and followers. See our website to order now. Yerase.